I found lipstick on his collar.
I didn't confront him. I installed one camera and let it speak. It was the kind of lipstick mark you don't notice until you're already too close. Not a dramatic kiss print like in movies. Just a soft smear, dust a rose, slightly waxy, caught in the weave of his white dress shirt right where the collar folds. I saw it because I was standing behind him in our bedroom while he leaned over the laundry hamper, telling me, casually, like it was nothing, that he might be late again. My hand was halfway to his shoulder, the way you touch someone you live with 1,000 times a week without thinking, and then my fingers stopped in midair like my brain had slammed on the brakes.
I didn't say anything. I didn't gasp.
I didn't even move. I just stared at that faint, stupid smear and listened to my blood start thumping in my ears. He kept talking, still facing the hamper, rummaging for socks like this was any normal weekday morning. "It's quarter end," he said, "and you know how it gets. Don't wait up, okay?" He straightened up, turned slightly, and I had to pretend my face still belonged to a woman who believed him.
I forced a smile so tight it felt like holding a cracked plate together. "Yeah," I said. "Sure."
Then he did the sweetest, most infuriating thing. He leaned in and kissed my forehead, quick and absent-minded, like a husband in a hurry.
Like someone who thinks he's doing a good job. His cheek brushed mine.
His cologne hit my nose, clean, expensive, familiar, and I had this awful thought, maybe the lipstick didn't bother him because he couldn't smell it. Maybe it didn't feel like a threat. Maybe it felt like a souvenir. He walked out of the room and kept talking over his shoulder about traffic and meetings, and I stood there for a full minute, staring at the doorway, trying to keep my breathing quiet. My hands started to shake only after he was gone, like my body waited until it was safe to react. I walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned both palms on the sink. My reflection looked normal, tired, sure, but normal.
Which was almost insulting.
Like my life could be coming apart and my face still had the audacity to look like a person who had chores to do. I need to back up a little, because I know what you're probably thinking.
Why didn't I just confront him right then?
Why didn't I hold up the collar like a piece of evidence and demand an explanation? Here's the thing. Confrontation is satisfying in theory. In reality, when you live with someone who's good at sounding reasonable, confrontation becomes a trap. Because the moment you accuse, they get to respond. They get to shape the story. They get to paint you as emotional, paranoid, dramatic. And my husband, Ethan, was very good at that. Not in a cartoon villain way. In a smooth, patient way. The kind of calm that makes you feel childish for even asking the question. Also, and this part is uncomfortable to admit, I wasn't ready to know yet. I was ready to suspect. I was ready to feel sick. But I wasn't ready to watch him deny it to my face and then have to decide what I do next. Suspicion is horrible, but it's also suspended.
Nothing has to happen yet.
The moment you confront, the future arrives. So I didn't confront him. I did what I always did when Ethan said something I didn't love. I swallowed it and moved on. Except this time, the lipstick didn't let me.
It was a Tuesday morning.
That detail matters because Tuesday is the least dramatic day. There's no weekend weirdness. No party excuses. No we were all out late story.
Tuesday is routine. Tuesday is predictable.
Ethan had been busy at work for months, but Tuesdays were usually normal. He'd come home, complain about his boss, eat dinner, scroll his phone, fall asleep on the couch with a documentary playing. Tuesday was where our marriage lived, in the boring, repeatable middle.
We'd been married 7 years.
Together for 11. No kids. That's another thing people assume, like cheating stories need toddlers and mortgages and custody battles to feel real. We had a mortgage, yes, and a dog who thought he owned the couch, but no children. And I mention that because it removes one common explanation people love to reach for. Maybe she was overwhelmed, maybe he felt neglected. People say that like it's a weather report. Like betrayal is a natural phenomenon you can predict.
Our life wasn't chaotic. We weren't drowning. We were stable.
And that's part of what made it terrifying. If he could do this in stability, what did stability even mean? Ethan worked in commercial sales, lots of client dinners, lots of relationship building, lots of golf days and networking events where spouses are invited just often enough to make it seem wholesome. I worked in HR for a mid-sized company, mostly remote since the pandemic. We had a nice rhythm, the kind that looks good from the outside. Combined finances, shared Netflix account, joint grocery list on our phones.
We hosted game nights. We traveled once or twice a year.
We posted the occasional smiling photo for family.
Nobody would have called us passionate, but nobody would have called us broken either.
But in the 6 months leading up to that Tuesday, Ethan started changing in ways that were easy to ignore if you wanted to. He started wearing his nicer shirts on random days, not just meetings.
He started going to the gym at odd times.
He started taking calls in the garage, saying he didn't want to disturb me while I worked. He became protective of his phone, not snatching it away, but turning it face down more often, stepping away to answer messages, bringing it into the bathroom like it was an organ.
I noticed all of it.
I just didn't put the pieces together because putting them together would have meant admitting the picture. The lipstick was the first piece that didn't have an innocent explanation.
I tried, believe me.
I tried to tell myself maybe he hugged a coworker at a celebration. Maybe someone bumped into him. Maybe it was from a client's wife, overly friendly. I cycled through explanations like a slot machine. Maybe.
And each one felt flimsier than the last. The worst part? I didn't even know if it was lipstick at first.
I kept hoping it was some weird stain, like ketchup.
But it wasn't bright. It was matte.
It was the exact shade my friend Tara wears when she wants to look polished but not trying too hard.
It was unmistakably cosmetic.
I spent the rest of that day doing normal things with my brain in a different room.
I answered emails. I fed the dog. I folded laundry and stared at every collar like it might speak.
When Ethan texted "long day, might be late," my stomach dropped in that immediate, childish way, like the text itself was a shove. I wrote back, "Okay," with a period, because I couldn't handle adding a smiley face and pretending to be casual. At 6:40 p.m., I opened our front door and checked the porch like a lunatic.
I don't know what I expected to find.
A woman hiding behind a plant? A clue taped to the welcome mat? The porch was empty, just the usual package from Amazon we didn't remember ordering. That's when the camera idea hit me, not like inspiration, but like a solution that had been waiting in my brain for years.
It wasn't even a dramatic spy idea. It was practical. I work in HR.
I'm used to documentation. When someone reports harassment, I don't go confront the accused based on vibes. I gather facts.
I talk to people. I look for patterns. I document. I thought, I want the truth to exist outside his mouth.
Because if I confronted Ethan with lipstick, he could explain.
He could deny. He could make me doubt my eyes. But a camera doesn't argue.
A camera doesn't care how charming he is. It just records what happens when he thinks nobody is watching. Now, before anyone yells at me, yes, I thought about legality.
I'm not stupid.
I didn't want to do something that could blow up in my face later.
I also didn't want to be the kind of person who records their spouse without thinking.
So I did what I always do when I'm about to make a decision that could change my life. I researched until my eyes hurt.
I read about home security cameras. I read about audio consent laws. I read enough legal blogs to feel slightly nauseous.
And the main thing I learned was this: video in your own home is generally treated differently than audio, and audio is where things get messy.
So I decided no audio. Just video. I didn't want sound. I didn't want their words.
I wanted what couldn't be misunderstood. The next day, I went to a big electronics store and bought one small indoor camera that looked like a normal home security device.
Nothing fancy. Nothing cinematic.
Just a little black and white eyeball on a stand that connects to an app and records when it detects motion.
The kind of thing people buy to check on their pets.
The cashier said, keeping an eye on the dog, and I smiled and said, yeah, because lying to strangers was suddenly easy. At home, I carried the box into my office like it was contraband. I set it on my desk and stared at it for 10 minutes without opening it. Because opening it meant admitting I was doing this. It meant I was crossing a line from suspicion into action. Then I opened it. I installed it in our living room, angled toward the entryway and the hallway that leads to our bedroom and Ethan's home office. Not because I wanted bedroom footage, gross, no, but because the living room is where people walk.
It's where secrets have to pass through.
I tucked it on a bookshelf between a plant and a stack of board games, low enough to be hidden but high enough to see faces. If you didn't know to look for it, it looked like part of the clutter. I tested it by walking in and out of the room, watching myself appear on the app like a ghost version of me. I watched my own face on the screen and felt this tightness in my throat. There I was, inside my own home, watching myself like a stranger. That's when it hit me: once you start watching, you can't unsee. That night, Ethan came home at 9:15.
He was cheerful. Too cheerful.
He kissed me on the cheek and said, "Sorry, babe. Client dinner ran long." He went to the sink and washed his hands for a long time, scrubbing like he'd touched something sticky. I watched him with that new knowledge of the camera sitting silently on the shelf. I felt like I had a small secret of my own for the first time in months. Not a comforting secret. A tense one. But still, something he didn't control. I didn't ask where he was. I didn't ask who the client was. I made us tea. I petted the dog. I let the camera do the asking. The first 2 days, nothing happened. The footage was boring. Me walking around in sweatpants, the dog trotting by, Ethan tossing his keys on the counter, both of us existing in the Bay's normalcy of our life. I hated how relieved I felt watching nothing. It made me want to be wrong. It made me want to throw the camera away and apologize to myself for being paranoid. On the third day, Ethan came home early. 5:30. He never comes home early. He walked in, glanced around like he was checking for me, and then called my name. Maya. In my office, I answered, trying to keep my voice normal. He appeared in the doorway with this forced casualness. Hey, he said. I'm gonna grab a quick shower. We might go out for dinner. You up for it? My mouth almost said yes automatically, but something about the way he said might felt like a trap. Sure, I said. He smiled. Quick. Cool. I'll be fast. He showered. He put on a different shirt. He sprayed cologne like he was going somewhere that required effort. Then he came back into my office doorway and said, Actually, I have to run out for a bit. I forgot I promised to help Mark with something. Mark. A coworker. A name I'd heard 1,000 times. A name that was safe. Oh, I said, and I watched him closely. Okay. He leaned in to kiss my forehead. Same gesture. Same performance. I'll be back, he said. He left. I waited 10 minutes. Then I opened the app and scrolled to the live camera feed, just to see. Like I could see through the door. Like the camera would somehow show me what he was doing outside. Of course it didn't. It just showed an empty living room. He came back an hour later, looking slightly flushed, like he'd rushed. He carried a small paper bag. What's that? I asked, trying to sound casual. He held it up. Picked up dinner, he said. Thought we'd stay in. He set the bag on the counter. Thai food. Our usual. Comfort. And that was the thing, he was still trying to be a husband. He was still trying to keep the outside of our life intact while the inside was rotting. That night, while he slept, I watched the footage from the hour he'd been gone. Not because I expected to see something, he'd left the house, but because I had this nagging feeling that I needed to understand the pattern. I rewound to when he came home early. What I saw made my stomach drop in a slow, horrible way. At 5:27, Ethan entered the living room and walked straight to the bookshelf. He stood there for 2 seconds, staring at the shelf. Then he reached up and adjusted the plant. He didn't touch the camera, but his fingers hovered near it like he knew it existed. I paused the footage. Zoomed in. He didn't look surprised. He looked aware. My skin went cold. Had he spotted it? Had he been watching me too? Or was it coincidence? I replayed the moment. His eyes went to the shelf. His hand moved near the camera. Then he turned away. I sat in bed with my phone glowing in my hand, watching that 3-second clip over and over, and something settled in me. I needed to move the camera. Because if he knew, I was done. If he knew, he could perform for it. The next day, while he was at work, I relocated it. I put it in the corner of the living room near the TV, behind a decorative basket. Still visible enough to capture the entryway, but not obvious. I also changed the angle slightly so it would catch the hallway leading to his office more clearly. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not Tara. Not my sister. Not even my mom. Because once you say it out loud, people start offering advice. They start telling you what you should do. And I wasn't ready to be told. I was ready to know. 2 more days passed. Nothing. On Friday, Ethan texted at 3:12 p.m., going to happy hour with the team. Don't wait up. My body reacted like I'd touched a hot pan. I typed back, okay. He came home at 11:04. He was buzzed, not drunk, but loose. He hugged me too long. He told me I smelled good. He asked if I wanted to go away next month, just the 2 of us. He was generous with promises in the way guilty people can be, like they are trying to buy back normal. When he fell asleep, I watched the footage. It was boring until 8:17 p.m. At 8:17, the front door opened. Ethan stepped in quickly, glancing behind him like he was checking the hallway. Then he held the door wider, and a woman walked in.
She was tall, dark hair,
wearing a pale trench coat. She moved like she'd been here before, no hesitation, no looking around, just straight into our living room like it belonged to her too.
Ethan closed the door quietly.
The woman laughed, silent on video, but I could see it in her shoulders, in the way her mouth opened and her head tipped back. Ethan stepped closer to her, and she reached up and touched his chest, smoothing his shirt like she was fixing him. Like he was hers to tidy.
I felt my chest tighten so hard it was hard to breathe. My fingers went numb around the phone. He guided her down the hallway toward his office. They disappeared out of view.
I waited, staring at the screen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake him in the bed beside me. The camera kept recording the empty living room.
Minutes passed. 10. 20.
The dog wandered in at one point, sniffed the air, and trotted down the hallway like he could smell something wrong. At 8:46, they came back into view.
The woman's trench coat was gone. Ethan was adjusting his belt. His hair was slightly messed up. He looked light, like he'd taken off a heavy coat.
Like he was the version of himself I hadn't seen in a while.
She walked toward the door like she was leaving a casual visit.
Ethan followed her, and before she stepped out, she turned and kissed him.
Not a quick peck. A long kiss.
The kind of kiss you give when you're not hiding.
My throat made a sound I didn't recognize. A tight little gasp that didn't feel like me. I clamped my hand over my mouth in the dark so I wouldn't wake him. She left.
Ethan stood at the door for a second, listening, then locked it. He walked back into the living room, picked up a throw pillow from the couch, and held it against his face for a moment like he was inhaling her perfume. Then he straightened, smoothed his shirt, and, this is the part that still makes my stomach flip, he looked directly toward the camera's corner.
Not at the basket. Not at the floor. Directly toward where the lens was angled. And he smiled. A small smile. Quick. Like a private joke.
Then he walked out of frame.
I stared at that last moment until my vision blurred.
My brain tried to understand it.
Was he smiling because he knew?
Because he'd been performing?
Because he thought he'd gotten away with it? Or because he was just happy and happened to glance that way? I replayed it again and again.
The smile stayed.
The smile existed. The smile didn't care what it meant. I didn't sleep that night.
Ethan got up at 6:30 and kissed my forehead like nothing had happened.
Like he hadn't just brought a woman into our house.
I watched him leave.
I waited until the door closed.
Then I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and stared at my hands until they stopped shaking. If you've never had your reality confirmed like that, you might not understand the particular kind of numb that follows.
It's not relief. It's not even anger right away.
It's a hollow quiet where your brain is just adjusting.
Like the world has tilted and you have to relearn how to stand. I did the practical things first.
I saved the footage. I downloaded the clip of her entering, the clip of them returning, the clip of him looking at the camera. I saved it in 3 places: my phone, a hidden folder on my laptop, and a cloud drive with a password Ethan didn't know. I named the file something boring, April invoice, because that's the kind of detail that matters when you're suddenly living like a person who has to protect evidence.
Then I called a lawyer. Not because I was ready to file that day.
Not because I was suddenly brave. But because I didn't want to make the mistake of acting before I understood my options. The lawyer's office had the softest, most neutral voice on the phone. "How can we help you?" she asked, like she was scheduling a dentist appointment. I almost said, "Never mind." I almost hung up. But I forced the words out. "I think my husband is cheating," I said, and my voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. She scheduled a consult for Monday. That weekend, Ethan acted like the best husband alive. He suggested brunch. He cleaned the kitchen. He asked if I wanted to go for a walk. He rubbed my shoulders while we watched TV. It was like he could sense something, like guilt can make you attentive in a way love sometimes doesn't. I watched him and felt something I hated, grief for the version of him I used to believe in. Because he wasn't monstrous. He wasn't cruel in obvious ways. He was just dishonest. And dishonesty in a marriage is like termites. Quiet. Structural. By the time you notice, the foundation is already damaged. On Monday, I met with the lawyer in a small office that smelled like coffee and printer paper. I wore a blazer like I was going to work, because dressing professionally made me feel less like I was falling apart. The lawyer, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a blunt voice, asked me a lot of boring questions. How long we'd been married? Assets? Mortgage? Any kids?
Any prenup.
I answered like I was reading from a file. Then she asked, "Do you have proof?"
My throat tightened. I nodded.
Yes. "Is it legal proof?" she asked, and I appreciated that she didn't sugarcoat it. "I installed a camera in our living room," I said carefully.
No audio. Just video.
It recorded him bringing another woman into our house. The lawyer paused, then nodded slowly.
Okay, she said.
That's significant. But we need to be careful about how it's used. Not because you're wrong, but because family law can be weird depending on where you are. Also, she looked at me. The bigger question is what you want.
I stared at her.
What I want? I repeated, like the concept was foreign.
Yes, she said gently.
Do you want a divorce? Do you want to confront and attempt reconciliation? Do you want to protect yourself financially before you do anything? Because all of those are different paths.
I swallowed.
I don't know, I admitted, and it was the first honest thing I'd said out loud in days. I thought, once I knew, I'd know what to do.
But
I feel stuck. The lawyer nodded, like she'd heard that exact sentence 100 times.
That's normal, she said.
Knowing doesn't automatically make you ready. Then she said something that stuck with me more than any legal advice. Don't let him set the timeline.
Because that's what cheaters do. They control time.
They decide when they leave, when they come back, when they tell the truth, when they apologize, when they try again. And the betrayed spouse is always reacting, always behind. I left the consult with a plan that felt both empowering and awful. Gather financial documents, make copies of important papers, open a separate bank account in my name only, and, if I chose to confront, do it after I was protected.
Not to be petty. To be safe. That week, I went into stealth mode. I didn't think of it as revenge. I thought of it as stabilizing the ground under my feet. I copied our mortgage statements. I downloaded tax returns. I photographed our car titles and insurance. I opened my own account and moved a small amount of my paycheck into it, not draining anything, not doing anything dramatic, just making sure I could pay for a hotel if I needed to. Ethan noticed none of it. Or he pretended not to.
On Thursday, he texted. Long day. Probably late.
My stomach did the now familiar drop.
I wrote back, okay. That night, at 8:09, the front door opened again. The same woman walked in. This time, she wasn't wearing a trench coat. She wore a bright sweater and jeans, hair loose.
She looked comfortable. She walked into our living room and kicked off her shoes like she belonged there.
Ethan kissed her immediately, hands on her waist.
He guided her down the hallway.
I watched the footage later with my hands clenched so tight my nails left crescents in my palms. The second time wasn't shocking like the first.
The second time was clarifying. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a one-off. It was a routine. He had created a second life inside my home.
There was one small detail that shouldn't have mattered but did. At 8:34, she walked back into frame holding one of my mugs. My favorite one. A chipped ceramic mug with tiny blue flowers. She took a sip like it was hers. I don't know why that hit me harder than the kissing. Maybe because it made it domestic. It made it intimate in a way sex isn't. Anyone can have sex. But drinking from someone's mug? That's a kind of entitlement. A kind of comfort. Ethan walked her to the door at 8:52. He kissed her. She left. Then Ethan turned back toward the living room and picked up a throw blanket from the couch, the one my grandmother gave me, and wrapped it around his shoulders for a second like he was savoring something. Then he folded it neatly. Like he was cleaning up after himself. Like he respected the house. That's where my anger finally sharpened into something useful. The next morning, I did confront him, but not in the way people imagine. I didn't throw the footage in his face while screaming. I didn't set his clothes on fire. I didn't call his mother and sob. I waited until he was pouring coffee, casual and unguarded, and I said, "Who is she?" He froze mid-pour. Coffee streamed into the mug and overflowed slightly, dripping onto the counter. He stared at the spill like it was a magic trick. "What?" he said, too fast. "The woman you've been bringing into our house," I said, and my voice was steady in a way that surprised me. "Who is she?" Ethan's face shifted into that calm, reasonable expression I'd been dreading. "Maya," he said slowly, like he was speaking to someone unstable. "What are you talking about?" I nodded, like I expected that. "Okay," I said. "So you're going to pretend?" Ethan's jaw tightened.
I'm not pretending.
I genuinely don't know what you.
Stop, I said. Not loud. Just, final. He blinked.
I leaned forward slightly and said, I know. I don't need your help understanding what I saw.
Ethan's eyes narrowed.
So, he repeated, and I could almost see his brain calculating. What did you see?
I watched him carefully.
The curiosity.
The caution.
The subtle attempt to make me reveal my hand.
I'm not doing this, I said.
I'm not going to debate reality with you. I'm asking one question. Who is she?
Ethan exhaled hard. He set the coffee down.
Are you accusing me of cheating? He asked, and his tone had this offended edge like I'd insulted his character.
Yes, I said.
He laughed once, incredulous. That's insane.
I stared at him.
Is it?
I asked softly. He shook his head, his anger rising because calm wasn't working. You're paranoid, he snapped.
You've been distant for months.
You're always stressed. You're always on your laptop. You don't.
There it is, I said quietly.
He stopped. What?
That's the script, I said, and my voice cracked just slightly on the last word. That's the part where you make it my fault. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. For a second, he looked genuinely caught off guard, like he didn't expect me to name it.
He tried again.
Maya, listen. If you've been feeling insecure.
I'm not insecure, I said.
I'm informed. Ethan stared at me, and this time his calm slipped.
How? He demanded.
I held his gaze. You know how? I said.
His face changed.
Something flickered. Fear, maybe. Or suspicion. He glanced toward the living room, and I knew exactly what he was looking for. The camera.
I hadn't moved it since Thursday.
I'd left it where it was because part of me wanted to see if he'd confess once he realized he'd been caught on something he couldn't talk his way out of. Ethan walked toward the living room slowly, like he was approaching a threat. He scanned the bookshelf, the corner, the basket.
His eyes landed on the lens. He stared at it for a long second.
Then he turned back to me, and his voice came out lower. You put a camera in our house.
Our house, I corrected automatically.
Not yours.
Ethan's face flushed.
That's, he started, then stopped, like he didn't know what accusation would land. That's a violation. I almost laughed, but the sound would have been ugly. You brought a woman into our house, I said.
Twice.
Maybe more.
And you're mad about a camera. Ethan's jaw clenched.
You recorded me without my consent.
No audio,
I said, because I'd rehearsed this.
Just video.
A security camera.
He stared at me like he was trying to decide whether anger or charm would work better.
Then he said, softly, you don't understand what you've done. I felt my stomach twist, not with fear this time, but with disgust. I understand exactly what I've done, I said. I protected myself from your lying.
Ethan's eyes darted. Who told you?
The camera, I said.
It spoke. You just didn't like what it said. He went quiet. His shoulders sagged slightly like a man realizing the floor is gone.
Then he did something that surprised me.
He sat down on the couch. He put his head in his hands for a moment.
Then he looked up at me with this expression that was almost weary. It's not what you think, he said, and I almost lost it.
Because of course. Even now. Even with proof. I stared at him.
Then tell me what it is, I said.
He swallowed.
It started as talking, he said. Just venting.
She gets me. She listens.
I didn't move.
I didn't blink. And then?
I asked. He looked away. It got complicated.
I waited. The silence stretched. And then?
I repeated. Ethan's voice got quieter. Her name is Celeste, he said.
Celeste. I'd never heard that name in our life.
Which meant he'd kept her entirely separate.
That was almost worse than a coworker.
A coworker is a messy overlap.
A stranger is a deliberate choice.
How long? I asked.
Ethan hesitated.
A few months. A few months, I repeated, and my voice came out flat.
He nodded.
It wasn't, he started.
Don't, I said. Don't minimize. Don't soften. Don't try to make it palatable.
Ethan's eyes filled slightly, and for a second I saw something that could have been regret. Then he said, I didn't want to hurt you. I let out a small, Bitter laugh. You brought her into my house, I said. You let her drink from my mug. He flinched, like that detail stung in a way the bigger ones didn't. I didn't think you'd ever know, he admitted. And that sentence, so casual, so honest, was the knife.
Not the cheating itself. The assumption that I would remain in the dark.
That my role was to maintain his life while he did whatever he wanted behind my back.
I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just felt something inside me settle like a door closing.
What do you want?
Ethan asked, voice shaky now.
Do you want me to end it?
I stared at him. This is where people expect the dramatic line. The instant divorce or instant forgiveness.
But real life doesn't give you that clean choice, not immediately. Real life gives you a man on your couch asking if you want him to stop cheating, like his offering to pick up milk on the way home.
I want you out, I said quietly. Ethan blinked.
What? I want you out of this house, I repeated.
Tonight. His face hardened.
You can't just.
I can, I said.
Because I'm not negotiating my dignity with you. Ethan stood up abruptly, anger surging. So that's it, he snapped. After 11 years, you're just throwing it away.
I stared at him.
You threw it away, I said. You just didn't expect me to notice it falling.
He paced. He ran a hand through his hair.
He muttered about mistakes and midlife crisis and feeling disconnected. And honestly, I tuned out half of it because the words were irrelevant. What mattered was what he'd done, not the story he wanted to attach to it.
He tried to bargain. He offered counseling. He offered to block her. He offered to let me check his phone.
He said he'd do anything. And here's the slightly uncomfortable observation I promised you. When someone says they'll do anything after they are caught, it's hard not to hear it as I'll do anything to avoid consequences. Because where was that devotion when he was quietly unlocking the front door for her? Ethan left that night with a duffel bag and the kind of resentment people carry when they are forced to face themselves.
He didn't slam the door. He didn't cry dramatically.
He just looked at me once, like he wanted me to be softer, and when I wasn't, he walked out. After he left, the house felt wrong.
Too quiet. Too big.
I walked into the living room and stared at the camera on the shelf.
It looked so innocent. So small.
Like a plastic eye that couldn't possibly hold that much devastation.
I thought I'd feel triumphant. Like I'd outsmarted him. But I didn't. I felt hollow. I felt like I'd just watched my own life on a screen and realized it didn't belong to me the way I thought it did. Over the next few days, the practical stuff took over. I called the lawyer again. I told how Ethan admitted the affair. She told me to keep communication in writing. She told me not to let him back into the house without a plan. She told me to stay calm. Staying calm is weird advice when your world is on fire, but I understood what she meant. Don't let him use your reaction as leverage. Ethan texted constantly. Long messages, short messages, apologies, anger, guilt. He swung wildly between "I'm so sorry" and "you invaded my privacy." He kept circling back to the camera like it was the main crime. I realized he liked that argument because it put him in the position of victim. It gave him moral footing. Celeste texted him too, at least, I assume she did, because one night he showed up at the door asking to talk, and his phone buzzed twice while he stood on my porch. He tried to hide it. The screen lit up anyway. A name I didn't recognize. He said, "She's freaking out," like that was my problem to solve. I stared at him through the glass door and said, "You should comfort her," and I watched his face twitch like he didn't know if I was being sarcastic or cruel. The truth was simpler. I wasn't going to comfort anyone anymore. Not him. Not her. Not the illusion. A week later, Ethan's sister called me. She was kind, genuinely. She said she couldn't believe he'd do this. She said she was sorry. Then she said, quietly, "He told me you were recording him." I laughed once, but it wasn't funny. "Of course he did," I said. "He said you were controlling," she added, hesitant. I felt something hot rise in my throat. "Tell him he brought another woman into my house," I said. "Tell him she wore shoes on my rug and drank from my mug. Tell him I didn't become controlling. I became aware." His sister went quiet. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. I'm sorry." That phone call left me with a strange feeling, the realization that Ethan was still trying to shape the narrative even after he was exposed. He wasn't trying to fix what he broke. He was trying to manage how people saw him. And maybe that's the part that lingered worst. Not the sex. Not the lipstick. The management.
The constant effort to remain the good guy in someone's story.
I never met Celeste. I don't know if she knew about me.
People like to assume the other woman is either a villain or a victim.
I'm not sure she was either. I suspect she knew enough to not ask questions. I suspect she didn't care.
Or she cared in the way that still lets you walk through someone else's front door. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that first lipstick smear and how small it was.
How easily I could have missed it. How many times I probably did miss things.
Not because I was naive, but because marriage trains you to assume goodwill.
It trains you to interpret in the best light.
That's what intimacy is, in some ways, giving someone the benefit of the doubt until they prove you wrong. I also think about the camera, and I feel conflicted.
Part of me is still uneasy about it. I don't like that I had to become someone who sets traps.
I don't like that I had to watch footage of my husband kissing another woman in my living room. I don't like that those images exist in my phone's memory like a permanent bruise. But I also know this: if I'd confronted him with lipstick, he would have lied.
He would have said I was imagining things. He would have made me doubt.
The camera didn't just show me the affair.
It showed me his capacity to lie comfortably. It showed me how practiced he was at living two lives. And there's no undoing that knowledge. We're still in the divorce process. It's not dramatic every day.
Most days it's emails and paperwork and figuring out who keeps what.
Sometimes Ethan is cooperative. Sometimes he's bitter.
Sometimes he acts like I'm the one who ruined everything because I wouldn't let him quietly return to normal. The ending isn't neat, and I don't want to pretend it is. My life didn't suddenly become empowering and glowing.
Some mornings I wake up and feel relief so sharp it surprises me.
Other mornings I wake up and feel grief like a heavy blanket.
The house feels too quiet sometimes.
The dog still waits by the door at 6 o'clock like Ethan might come home. I still catch myself reaching for my phone to text him something dumb about groceries before remembering there's no us to text into anymore. But I'll say this, and it's not a motivational quote. It's just my opinion after living through it. Trust your body when it flinches.
That flinch is data.
That little cold drop in your stomach is your brain noticing something your heart doesn't want to name yet. I didn't confront him because I didn't want a debate.
I wanted reality.
And reality, as gross as it was, spoke clearly once I gave it a microphone.
Thanks for watching.
If you've ever had that moment where a tiny clue, a stain, a scent, a weird shift in routine, turned into something you couldn't unsee, share your story in the comments. I read them, and I think it helps to know other people have survived the kind of quiet betrayal that hides inside ordinary days.